monkeys, and we call them velvet monkeys, canadero. They are the cause of poverty and starvation, where those animals eat the food crops from maize to bananas. They eat the cash crops from coffee to avocados to macadamia, leaving the public in Gatanga constituency with devastation, starvation, and lack of income. What plans do you have as a ministry, number one, to eradicate those animals which are really destructive? And secondly, what plans does the ministry have for purposes of compensating those farmers who cannot be able to feed their children and they have been deprived of their incomes?
One of the strategies that we have is to relocate. And we are working on a strategy currently because we have Nairobi National Park that has two ecosystems of environment, the forest and the savanna. We are rethinking of relocating this, not particularly to Nairobi, but that is one of the pointers of the parks that we might relocate. And number three, whether they will be compensated according to the Wildlife Conservation Management Act and the particular schedule on compensation. These particular monkeys are not in the schedule for compensation.
Minister, are you sure you are going to relocate monkeys from Gatanga to Nairobi?
Mr. Speaker, you know of situations where lions have been straying into South Sea Estate. Lions have been straying onto Mombasa Road. Already dealing with the lions is an issue. Now the Veros coming from Gatanga and being relocated to Nairobi is now complexing the matter even worse. I am yet to understand how these Veros will be dealt with by being transferred to Nairobi.
Just an advisory. We had the issue of monkeys in game because we have our forest cover is very high, about 85%. My advice to my constituents, and to recruit one individual, just paint it red, all the monkeys will run away. You paint one monkey red, the other monkeys will think that's a shaitan, and they run away. They go to the town where there's no forest. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The KWS is trained in this agenda, and that's why they spend a lot of years in Manyani in terms of darting of these animals. They use different techniques. But also allow me to say that it is true that the people of Nairobi do not want monkeys around. However, we are not saying, and in my statement I said, we are only trying to see where we can relocate these. But there are so many underlying things that we check. One of it being, when we call them problematic animals, it is not because they are problematic in the space of the farms and the maize and everything else.
Okay, am I forgiven to say monkey business? Or rather, the business of monkeys was on the floor of the House talking about the menace that has been in Gatanga. I almost called you Speaker because you're former Speaker of Nairobi County Assembly, but you're the member now of Dagoretti North. Your thoughts about the role of having cabinet secretaries appearing before the House and the sessions you've had. Are you satisfied, but also your reflections on what just transpired in the House from that clip?
Thank you very much. First, yes, I think the role in terms of the cabinet secretaries coming on the floor of the House, very important. Because I think when we were doing our constitution, we assumed that things will run the way they used to run, and you are quickly to get an answer from your minister and within Parliament in seconds. If you have an emergency, you don't need to run all over to the offices. The chairs don't need to run, then get an answer, then bring an answer that is not satisfactory, then you are returned, but you'd be able to just solve the problem. And I think that is what we are envisaging, slowly by slowly, that this will also cure that problem. In terms of the answers now, what I'll tell not all. Let me first thank, we had our CS, internal security, Kindiki. I mean, he started on very well. He came in ready. He knew his docket is the most heaviest docket, and I want to thank him because he answered, and we appreciated. Indeed, if every would have come like that, how I wish, then people will feel, yes, you understand your ministry and you are able to pick on what is happening, especially current. Then we came in, Murkomen also did a fantastic job. He explained everything, what is supposed to be done, and left when every member felt, you have answered my question, I have felt you. In agriculture, I was not there, so I will not comment so much, but I know he also did his part, and he gave, and also gave a plan. You see, you don't just come to answer questions. You come to give also, to explain what is happening, how are you improving, what would you wish to get support from Parliament, even if it's policy support, if it's support on the Act. Honorable Wahome came in, she did very well. She explained where she's going to take water, what is needed, and all that. Now we have my sister, for Labour. I know at once she had an issue, she did not come, so the day she came in, most of us were not also in, but I hope and I believe she performed. So now we come to our sister in tourism, which I know I also asked so many questions, but I felt maybe she'll come back in her next to just expound on them and tell us, because one of the hanging fruits we have right now among, when you look at what the president would wish to do from agriculture, from education, one of the hanging fruits is tourism. And you must have it on your fingertips. You must tell Kenyans, so far, with this Pampa, Masai Mara, and all this happening, we are able to have seen a certain number of tourists who have come in for the last 1 year.
What was the impression on Wednesday last week?
Now, we were talking about monkeys, as you say, and you know you cannot relocate monkeys. How? How will you even catch it for the first and then relocate it? It will come back because it jumps. And so the best is to ask yourself, now that we've encroached in human and animal spaces, how do we create awareness, especially in terms of how do you live with them health-wise? How do you take care so that you don't find yourselves maybe having any disease, but you won't know?
Oh, Bolache, are you sure you're responding to my question? What was the impression?
My impression? You want me to be honest?
I can help her.
No, you don't need.
She was in the house, actually.
You don't need.
About it.
My impression is this. She can do better. She needs to really have a sitting with her team. And I always say, don't be afraid. I mean, we've learned from our speaker here that you go back and learn. Get into the government institution at KIE and just go sit in for 2 weeks. You'll come out a pure civil servant. You'll understand anything that happens in your ministry. So that is what they need to do.
So the nature of the sessions is that there will be statements from members. They'll be sent to the CS,
yes.
But there can be supplementary questions on the floor.
There are many supplementary. That's why you must be very ready. And that's why I'm saying how I wish they learned from the first, who was our CS Kindiki. He was there, but you have supplementaries also.
The supplementaries are only related to the main substantive question.
Yes, yes.
Which means, really, if you've prepared for the substantive question, you should be able to deal with the
all
supplementary questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Because you can't ask a brand new question.
No.
But you can ask something related to the substantive question.
Yeah.
But also the CS is allowed to say that I have to go look for the answers.
If it is a brand new,
If it's a brand new question or they don't have the facts at hand,
You're
then
allowed.
they should be able to say, that I do not have the facts relating to that question, but I will note it down and I will come at a later time if invited to come and answer it. And that is why we don't want the CSS to come to Parliament and just get, try and, maneuver their way out of the question. That's why they are given 14 days. In those 14 days, they are supposed to have actually gotten the actual facts. So you'll find that when they come to Parliament, they are giving actual answers with examples. They talk about the budget. If there's a shortfall, they should be able to give it. So it's a meaningful question time. It's not supposed to be, it's not a political event. Okay. In political events, you can say certain words and get away and get out of that rally. Yes.
All right. Senator, I note your hand. I'll be giving an opportunity shortly. But let's listen, because, again, the following day on Thursday, there was a bit of discomfort by some members of Parliament on the conduct of the Cabinet Secretary for Sports. Listen to the Leader of Majority.
They go represent our country out there, they win, come back, and not a single officer in the ministry or the minister himself has the decency and the courtesy to receive them at the airport and even to recognize and appreciate the good work they have done for our country. And indeed, Honorable Speaker, I can hear the Honorable Shakil whispering that he is busy, and all ministers are busy. But when you're Minister for Sports, your core business is managing our sportsmen and women. And more so those who are able differently, these are the people who we should support more.
All right, and of course this has caused a lot of heat, and we'll be listening to another clip later. But Senator, what do you make of this? Yes, the members of Parliament are expressing themselves. I understand that now the Sports Cabinet Secretary has been summoned before the House. What would you say is the contribution of this to matters governance?
I wanted to actually say this was fantastic. This is supposed to be our role. National Assembly is supposed to oversight the executive. What Honorable Ichung'wah is saying is what many of us have been saying. I want to tell you, Sami, how I wish we had a way, for example, the Parliamentary public broadcasting station would be showing what was happening in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, when ministers used to come to the House. What was the quality of debate? What was the responsibility of the minister or his assistant minister? Were they prepared? Were they organized in such a manner that actually when they came and made the presentations, they made the presentations effectively? And that is why you find, for example, that Kindiki is going to find it very easy to answer his questions. The criticism of Ababu Namwamba, for me, is not a shock. I mean, look at the performance of Ababu from the time when he started his politics. What were the issues which were being raised? What was his behavior? It's the same. For me, I see it as a common trend. Sami, I know you may not see that. Go back to history.
What do you mean with that?
Go and check. Tell your people to check the records. Ababu Namwamba has always had these issues. On and on. Every minute was Minister for Labor. The time he was Assistant Minister for Forest.
What issues?
Constantly having leadership in the House and people telling him he's not serious with his work. I'll give you an example. In the International Rally Championship, the Kenyan government spent 2 billion shillings to hold it. Ababu Namwamba was given that responsibility. He has left a pending bill of 3.6 billion. All right? These are the issues that people need to start asking. Why is it that people are given responsibilities, they are not able to perform and give us what we expect? For me, what I've looked at is, and I really hope for you who are in the KK Alliance, please mention to your people that the Kenya School of Government, and that's what you've said, I think you're the one who said, Sami, there is no institution that is more qualified, that has got the experienced teachers and professionals, that has got the history, that has got it. The Kenya School of Government can educate you in a period of 3 weeks for you to come from being a dunderhead to being a professor.
Whoa.
They are so incredible. It's like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I have been raising the same issue with Mutua. Yeah, why is Mutua not using the best brains they have in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? We have those people there. And we cannot continue playing politics anymore. And I learned this from the coalition government, the one of, I think, 2007, 8, and 9. In the coalition government, different people with different views were participating in that government, and were being guided correctly by government. And I would go and answer questions in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I would discuss them. But I was given what I could discuss, and they prepared me thoroughly. So the feeling I have is what I've been seeing happening with the answering of the questions at the National Assembly and at the Senate is that some of the CSs are not prepared. I am happy that President Ruto has already read the Marriott Act. We don't want mediocrity anymore in our country. If somebody is not capable to answer a question, what are the interventions that you're going to bring in to stop the monkeys from leaving their natural environment and moving into the city? And you're saying you are going to pick them and take them. You can't. It is going to be crazy.
Okay.
Everybody knows that. The last point I wanted to say is that many of these people who come, many of the ministers who come to answer the question, Sami, have been having a problem, and it's not their own problem. I think, and this is why the Senate has taken this matter for interpretation at the Supreme Court. What we want to plead with our members of the KK Alliance, can they please make sure that when the minister is coming to answer questions, they are very clear which questions the minister, if it's the Senate, can we deal with matters, devolution, county governments, and that kind of stuff? When you go to the National Assembly, can the ministers be prepared enough to come in and answer questions to the members of the National Assembly where they have the data, where they have the information, where they have the intelligence, so that they are able to convince Kenyans that, yes, there's a reason for these hearings to take place, and there's a reason for this minister to have come to give us the answer.
Right.
But so far, like she has said, other than the performance of Kindiki and I believe the performance of the Minister for Agriculture, the rest, it's been a facade. So we are saying, can KK improve and change the attitude that many of the ministers have, and that is let them know that Kenyans are so well educated and exposed, and Kenyans now want real answers. You're not going to come and sugarcoat things and talk about. So what I saw Kimani Ichung'wah do and many of the members of the KK Alliance talking about what Babu is doing and what is not doing. Look at the wastage. I mean, you saw the story.
I hear you, Senator.
But let me just add this.
Just hold it. Please don't head down. I want to listen to something more that the Leader of Majority said on the floor of the House, then we can continue with the conversation.
In those 30 years, our ministers not carrying joyriders on trips abroad to accompany them to trips abroad and doing nothing. We must see them here, receiving our #1 ambassadors around the world.
Their peers, I'll get to you for my peers because
I want to talk about this. This is my...
it's me who should finish and then I hand over to you.
Please note it down. I'll get to you. She hasn't spoken in a very long time.
No,
yes, and this is my thing.
I was on Kimani Ichung'wah and I want to say, thank you, Kimani. This is what we have been saying. Why are you carrying, when you're going to, and I said, President Ruto has already he has issued a memo. He has already, the national government has already said, don't travel with more than 3 people. Now what you have is, I think Kimani Ichung'wah was not able to say that there's a possibility that girlfriends were being carried along or boyfriends by some of the officers. I mean, these things have to be stopped. We need to know that it can't be business as usual. And Kenyans are getting angry. Some of these players are going to wait for somebody abroad. You know, we know who goes there, and you know who he is with. You are going to see those athletes. They'll want to beat a minister there because they are not given the allowances. He goes there on a leisure. He flies first class. He sleeps in one of the most expensive hotels. Our athletes are being given a place where they pay $50 to sleep.
Deputy Speaker, how do you shield ministers from character assassination on the floor of the House under the guise of privileged information or in a privileged space of what members can speak?
Usually the standing orders require that if you make an allegation against any public servant or anyone in the House, you should be able to substantiate your allegations.
But someone has to require you on a point of order, I guess.
Yes, somebody has to require you to substantiate.
And the ministers are not there to raise an...
But the minister can respond. The minister can request, now that they have a time.
I'm talking about like what transpired on Thursday. with the leader of majority and what he says, which is open to interpretation, the minister is not there to respond.
If it's not factual, then the minister can be able to ask for appear before the committee, or even during the question time to say, I would like an opportunity during question time
to defend myself.
They'll be given the opportunity. But I don't think the leader of majority would say something that's not substantiated. And I'm happy that this was raised. Unfortunately, when that was happening, I was in Wasingishu for the devolution conference and then with the Law Society conference too. So I was not in the house on that day. But this is something I feel very strongly about. And coming from Wasingishu County, where most of the athletes come from, it's very painful. I listen to them. Every time they've landed, the Boston Marathon champion, the London Marathon champion, they have come to my home. Here in Kitusuru, I've hosted them because the cabinet secretary is not bothered. No one is there. I'm the one who's hosting them in my house. If you look at my Facebook page, I've hosted them for breakfast. They've sat through lunch. They've told me their challenges. And when they tell you the horror stories of what happens to them, they fly economy. The AK officials and the ministry officials are flying business class and first class. Sometimes they have a layover of 14 hours.
Yes. Sleeping at the airport.
Yes, and even just seeing the management of sports at the moment, it's pain. If you look today, I checked as late as yesterday. Look for the Talenta Hela app. It doesn't exist. They told us it was launched. It doesn't exist. The other day, when our team, I think they went to Tunisia for the beach games, they were wearing fake sports uniforms. They were wearing, I think it was fake Adidas or knockoffs from River Road. If you look at the team that went to Trinidad Tobago, again, they were wearing fake uniforms. It just asks you, by the time a country reaches a point where our athletes are wearing fake uniforms, there is really something wrong.
And there's something wrong with...
There's something wrong with the management of sports. When you get to the point that doping is rampant in the country, yet I'm from Wasingishu, and I'm telling you, the chemists that issue these drugs to our young people are known. The coaches that issue these drugs are known. Why is it that they've not been arrested? Investigations, I've been following it up personally. I've been following up the issue because none of those young people know about doping. They can hardly buy food or shoes. So there's no way they know about doping. So it's usually the coaches or the people around them who are providing these drugs and lying to them that it's not doping.
Supplements.
Yeah, they tell them it's supplements and so on. And these kids don't know. They're very young. Most of them have never traveled in their lives. And these people are known. The anti-narcotics unit is in on it because every time the officers have traveled to Eldoret and Elgeyo Marakwet and Nandi County to do the investigations, they are usually recalled. So the matter has never been concluded.
Recalled by who?
They are recalled back by the anti-narcotics unit.
Yeah.
The anti-narcotics unit is not bothered to try and investigate this issue. Today, I can tell you, and I have reported this...
Is Parliament seized of this matter?
No, I'm waiting for the day. It's one of the questions that I've put for the Cabinet Secretary when he appears before Parliament. I have raised that question, and I've said I want him to come and answer. Because we have the photographs of the people in charge of the doping. We even got one person to agree to be a state witness so that he could tell us who are the others. So it is possible in one raid in Elgeyo Marakwet and Wasingishu County that you can arrest all those people involved in this doping. Any of the coaches and the agents, if your athlete has been found to have been doping, you should lose your license.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's you who fed it. So this is such a serious problem. And I speak today not as Deputy Speaker. I am speaking as somebody who is a leader in Wasingishu County. Because every time there is this crisis, people come to me. They come to my home. They come and tell me we have this problem. I have represented athletes who've been found to be doping pro bono, including Rita, the Chicago Marathon runner. We have rogue agents. I pushed that case until the coaches and the agents were kicked out of the country. They're Italian. They were kicked out of the country, but within no time, Athletics Kenya brought them back into Kenya. I had gotten them to be deported out of this country because of what they were doing to our athletes. So yes, there is challenges, and I'm very passionate about this issue. It's a very painful thing because most of the economy of Wasingishu County actually rides on these athletes.
Okay.
They're the ones who bring in money to our country,
All right.
into our county. They're the ones who built the big buildings. They're the ones who have set up businesses and so on. So if this collapses, it's scary. And I remember last year, we ran a risk as Kenya from being barred from going to Paris 2024. Yes. And I remember at that time I was involved in a flurry of activity because I was terrified. I said, if we can't go to Paris, then Uasin Gishu County economy is finished. Because that is what we depend on. That is what we are known for. When I introduce myself, I say I come from the city of the greatest marathon runners in the world.
Right. All right, I hear you. And former PS, what has changed? Because in those 10 years, we have had a different structure at ministries. So a CS is a CS, no assistant minister or assistant ministers. Well, there's principal secretary, but now differently deployed, bearing in mind that actually this time round you have a majority of those PSs, or a sizable number of them being former politicians. So how different would it be for a minister? And what is your comment about the sort of oversight going on in Parliament, knowing that the structure has changed? What are the benefits and the demerits?
In the old constitution, we basically had a mixture between the presidential system and the parliamentary system. But we attempted to go to a pure presidential system in the new constitution. Challenges have been how to transit from the mixed system, which we had had for quite a long time. And people had developed certain cultures and certain attitudes towards it, to the pure presidential system. So one of the challenges that arose at the very beginning was, for instance, deciding what is the role of the principal secretary and the role of the cabinet secretary. There was a feeling that cabinet secretary should be more empowered to be the day-to-day managers of the ministries, as opposed to when they were not day-to-day managers of the ministries. Then in the legislature, there was, of course, the concept of there being no opposition, where you have minority and majority, but the entire legislature is expected to hold the executive to account, as opposed to the minority part holding the executive to account. So I think what has been the challenge is adjusting to that. For instance, where ministers are not in Parliament, how are they supposed to respond to questions of accountability? So I think part of the challenge is to have a very clear issue, a clear arrangement in terms of the role of the principal secretary and the role of the cabinet secretary. At that time, the thinking was that then the cabinet secretaries who would come in would be technical experts. That, of course, was attempted a bit in the first administration. There were more of the technical experts being cabinet secretaries. And then again, there was the feeling that probably the political leaders are more effective in terms of representing and articulating the interests of the people. And again, we saw a bit of a reverse towards more of the political leaders being cabinet secretaries. And of course, that has an impact. And of course, there was also
positive
the issue.
Or negative?
There was also the issue of the principal secretaries also not initially being very technical. But again, there was a shift to less technical secretaries, principal secretaries. So I think that is probably the gap that's being felt. Then there was also a bit of confusion in terms of the role of the head of public service and the chief of staff. There was quite a bit of mix-up in the beginning. So I think that's what's coming together in terms of people beginning to question themselves whether we need to rethink the pure presidential system, whether we are able to effectively carry out the pure presidential system. And if you looked at the BBI, a lot of that rethinking was carried in that proposal. And I think even now the proposals before the legislature in terms of bringing in the cabinet secretaries back into the legislature has a lot to do with the perceived gaps. And this may have to do with basically the strength and integrity of the institutions. Because the pure presidential system basically works on the basis of very strong institutions in the legislature, in the executive, and in the judiciary. So it's a very institution-based system, as opposed to the parliamentary system, which is very political heavy. It's very political dominated, mostly by political parties.
But what are your thoughts? At a time that Parliament will demand that the Cabinet Secretary appear before them and answer to the questions, yet we know, like you have explained, a Cabinet Secretary is just alone in terms of the leadership of that ministry. The PSs are in charge of the departments. What is your comment about the workload for one Cabinet Secretary, and you have to respond to everything within your docket, but also answer questions in Parliament and be politically, should I say, correct, or in the right books politically, really?
One Cabinet Secretary, but he has very many officers and advisors and technical staff around him.
I think it's the having a proper arrangement in terms of accountability, in terms of, for instance, the technical issues being wholly reposed with the Principal Secretary, and the policy issues being reposed with the Cabinet Secretary. So if that division, that divide is properly maintained and properly understood, and both the Principal Secretary and the Cabinet Secretary have adequate capacity, which, as we have said, can be created through the School of Government, then that would be okay. But what I see being a continuing and lingering challenge is, you know, our system is very patronage-based system. So you find the demands on the Cabinet Secretary are very political and very much to constituencies and the political arena. So I don't know whether they are able to spend enough time on policy issues. And that could be where the challenge is, because the idea is of our presidential system is that he is spending maybe 90% of his time on policy issues and has a thorough understanding of policy issues as opposed to political issues. Okay. So that divide would have to be done. And then the technical departments under the Principal Secretary must also be very up to the task in terms of interacting with the Cabinet Secretary and supporting his work. Because the way it has always been, when you are minister in the old system was called to the legislature, you knew as a Principal Secretary it is you who has been called to the legislature. So you would prepare the best answer, because if your minister is embarrassed in the legislature, you come for you once he comes from there. But
all the same, you may do the work as the PS, but it's up to the CS, because some
to articulate
may not necessarily be in text in the response.
That's true. But normally there would be a written response, which is given in good time, both to the legislature and to the Cabinet Secretary.
Actually, they normally come with a written response, which they hand to Parliament.
Interesting. Honorable Elachi.
Yes, one of the things that I think then our CSS needs to do is that you have to understand you've come in and you have a team that has lived there for many years, a technical team that has it was there for another minister and another. So you must blend in and learn how to work with them so that they are able to give you all the information that is within your ministry. But if you come in and you feel so I'm the CS, so that's it. Don't forget, they will also feel the same. Right. So they will never come in to tell you anything. They will await if you call in. If you don't call in, they will continue with their work, by the way. Yes, that's how the ministry works. The officers will proceed with their works because they have their work, and they will continue doing. So it is for you to now calm down, look at what is even happening. Understand you can have a ministry where your PS is in teleposter, you are, I don't know in which house, so you are so far apart, and so you find many technical officers are not with you. Right. You will be very vulnerable. And so if you're a good CS, go and learn first of all, where is my staff? And how many are they? And what do they do in my ministry, so that in the morning when you don't just say, I'll rely. You see, we have some CSS, they only rely with the top. They will never even understand who sits at the door down there. They do not, I am telling you. That is why you find staff and CSS each have an attitude to each other. Why? Because after all, you don't bother with us, you don't care where...
Is it a personality issue or it's
a very serious
personality?
It's a personality issue. You have to learn how to just understand ministries. And there are huge ministries, by the way. Let's say, for example, I'm the CS of a ministry that has 4 PSS. You have to be able to now go and look at this department, what do they do? And how can so that you don't go with one department leaving the rest behind. Because that is why, and that's why I always say, as much as people will say we don't need CASES, you need them. You need them to monitor for you this department and this department. Then they come in and have a meeting on Monday, either every Monday, just to understand what are the other departments doing before I know. So that when you go even to His Excellency, that's why His Excellency is saying, I know more than you in your ministry. Why? He's able to know there are 3 PSS here, and each are functioning. You, as a CS, have gone and did a click. You've decided here is where maybe the money is, or the traveling, or the what. You now focus on this. You forget all these other this within your ministry are your departments, and you must have tap on it. You must understand what they are doing. If not, you will lose revenue. You will have many people complaining, and even you'll find yourself now not performing.
I want us to close on this. Senator, you worked as an assistant minister at some point. Do you think it is humanly possible? Because a cabinet secretary of the year 2023 in Kenya, you have the pressure from the president, who sometimes knows more than you do. You have the pressure from Parliament, but you also have the pressure, because you're a politician, you also have political pressure probably from home or wherever you stand. Is it humanly possible to give your best and be in the right books across board?
Yes.
Number one, I would say it is possible when you're prepared and you have the capacity. The issues that are being discussed by all of us here brings the whole scenario about what it is that, how do we behave when we vet the people who are supposed to come to government departments and sections. And that is why I've been screaming, can we please bring back meritocracy? In other words, pick the best person who KK has, who has knowledge on agriculture, who went to school for it, who has the facts, who has the figures, and who knows how to interface with the officers in the ministry, so that then he can make sure the place is functional. The problem is you have individuals who've been given ministries. Some of them have never known anything to do with that ministry. Some of them actually don't even have the basic notes. If you look at government departments in this country, every single detail is there from 1963 and beyond. When I used to be in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I could sit down in the morning and I knew I had a press conference at 2 in the afternoon. Between 11 and 1, I have officers in my office who are telling me what is our position on Egypt, if that is what I'm going to discuss that day. They would tell me why Kenya is not engaged in Western Sahara, why it is a hot potato, why must we leave it. When you go to the Great Lakes region, incredible, clever young people in the ministry, they will run me through what Rwanda thinks, what Uganda does, what Burundi does, what is the general position, what are the groups in Eastern Congo, the M23s, you're talking about the LPDF, what is the Rwandese government. All that information was clearly available. I was forced actually to understand what it was, so that when a journalist asks you an impromptu question, you don't make a fool of yourself. So what you see happening is, for me, I have said it before, we don't need 45, what are they called, CASs. We have got 23 ministries. Let us have 22. Let us have 22 CSs. The reason is the minister may not have the time to go through. Like now, you see, a minister is called to come to the committee of CPAC in Senate. The same time, we finish the meeting at 2. He is called to go and meet the committee of budget in the National Assembly.
Right.
Then by the time he's finishing at 6, you might find he's having a state function. That is not humanly possible. So we need to make sense, rationalize. The only thing we disagreed as the opposition is, don't bring 45 people or 50 of them to be assistant ministers of ministers. Give a minister deputy and make sure the responsibilities are very clear to the deputy. And then please let us hire people who are qualified to serve certain functions. The reason why we have been saying that what we are doing at the National Assembly, even the way we are vetting some people, I mean, somebody's asking a question, do you know anything about Zambia? They look and say, huh? Then the following day, this person is cleared that they can go and be Kenya's ambassador to Zambia, surely.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, all right.
But to be honest to the committees, just 1 minute, to be honest to the committees, do you know they come in and they give because some of these years the committees had given a clear report. I think it is just the mob of the House where we decide, no, we are just passing. But for sure, the committees had given the right reports.
Okay, all right. Let's hear from the viewers at Citizen TV Kenya. Tam Gituku, they to use this daybreak on what Kenyans are thinking this morning, including one Dr. George, who is saying that how does CS Malonza plan to relocate monkeys from Gatanga? Here is Honorable Lilian Siwe, who is saying that explored affirmative actions to be taken and achievements made towards a sustainable future. Inclusion of women, youth, and vulnerable groups in governance is key to the success of devolution. That is on our earlier conversation. Brian Chamoy, saying we should foster great collaboration between counties, national government, NGOs, private sector, and international organizations to pool resources and expertise. Also, citizen engagement and participation are crucial for successful county improvement initiatives. Kipto Ruto, you're saying that many counties struggle as a significant portion of revenue ends up in revenue expenses. This often leaves limited resources for critical developmental initiatives. The battle against corruption is pivotal here, as it directly impacts the allocation of funds. Someone else is Okelo Mwalimu, saying that for devolution to work, the following should be done. First, central bank should show goodwill by releasing devolved funds to counties on time. Each county should concentrate on production of commodities where they have comparative advantage to avoid wastage. And Godi Baraza, Parliament should be free from being beholden of the powers that be and impartially discharge its mandate. That's the only way Kenyans will get top quality in representation, oversight, and legislation. Babu Michael, the parliamentary oversight in Kenya is just a formality. Most of these issues are raised in Parliament and thereafter intervention by higher political or government officials through phone calls and all that. That's the opinion of Michael. And Atanas Mavuti, you're saying that why is Parliament not taking action against the underperforming cabinet ministers? Who are the MPs complaining on TV, yet they can impeach a cabinet secretary? What a way to end the conversation. I have to thank all of you for making time for us of this conversation, from Senator of Kisii, Richard Onyonka, Honorable Beatrice Elachi, Gishira Kibara, and former PS, advocate and also governance expert and analyst, but also Deputy Speaker, Honorable Gladys Boss, for making time for us of this conversation. See you again some other time. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again.